I think that, and I actually had a chance to talk to Ben Jealous this weekend, and he seemed to have some interesting ideas. One of the things he's been committed to lately has been workers' rights and job creation. He wants to organize a march on Washington in October. So I'm excited to see advocacy again. But for so long, the NAACP seemed to be the repository for the complaints and the concerns and the anxiety of the black middle class. And as such, we didn't deal with issues around poverty, issues around urbanicity. Instead, we focused, prior to Ben Jealous, we only focused on wealth building. I mean, they were really talking about wealth building initiatives. It was really talking about expanding and fortifying a black middle class that has deep anxiety and embarrassment related to the black poor. So for me, the NAACP isn't at the vanguard anymore. When this thing happens, so when a 7-year-old girl gets firebombed, you know, the NAACP is not there. Al Sharpton's there. Jesse Jackson's there. There are advocacy organizations there. The Malcolm X Grassroots Party's there. Those organizations are there, and they have different, each organization has a different role, but they're there. The NAACP, to me, has taken a turn that, to me, isn't positive. It involves itself too much in partisan politics. It involves itself too much in middle-class concerns. I think that we have to get back to its base, which is helping the desperate, helping the vulnerable. I think when we think about Crisis Magazine in the early part of the 20th century, when we think about the great W.E.B. Du Bois, who founds the NAACP, when we think about even the Niagara meetings that precede the NAACP, there was a preoccupation with thickening American democracy. There was a preoccupation with changing the relationship between individuals and the state. That's the kind of stuff that needs to continue to happen. We need to be there when Oscar Grant gets assassinated. We need to be there when Sean Bell gets murdered by the police. We have to be there intervening in those affairs to assure that justice and order gets maintained or at least imposed. That doesn't happen from the NAACP side anymore. We have to ask that question. We have to ask the question, what is the relationship between the NAACP and Wells Fargo? At first, they were challenging Wells Fargo, and next thing you know, they're a sponsor. I'm not suggesting that the NAACP did anything wrong. I'm not suggesting that Ben Jealous did anything unethical. What I'm saying, though, is there's no transparency right now. We don't know what made them flip the script on Wells Fargo. These are the things that the people want to know. Otherwise, we assume that they are simply the poodle of big business, of multinational corporations, and of middle-class, bourgeois blacks who have absolutely no concern for the black poor. I'm not saying all don't, but I'm saying the ones who tend to guide these organizations often don't, and that's scary again to me. You know, as an activist, I'm deeply concerned, saddened even by the state of affairs with activism. I mean, there's all this possibility. We have forms of social media, forms of social networking, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, that get used for all sorts of social purposes, but not for the purpose of advancing our struggle. So we seem to have a tank full of gas, but we're not going anywhere. We have black intellectuals who will stay in the ivory tower and not engage problems on the ground in the real world. I can't tell you how many times I've traveled around this country for a protest or for an organizing meeting, and there will be a town where the local mechanic is the NAACP chair, and the local the neighborhood babysitter is organizing a rally, which is all good. Everyday people need to be doing this stuff. They're some of the most ingenious and brilliant and insightful political minds we've ever had. However, the guy with the PhD up in the big university won't leave his office. He'll sit in his office and write a book on social movements, but won't join one. That, for me, is a profound problem that speaks again to the disconnect between our brightest and our best and what's going on the ground. And then you have everyday black folk who, in the moment of Obama, feel as if protest, almost like the right has told us, right, that protest is somehow unpatriotic, or we are not supporting the president by challenging laws that don't operate in our interest, or challenging policies that don't operate in our interest, or demanding policies that would be in our interest. None of that stuff seems to be happening as much. In 2006, I remember going to, it was either 2006 or 2007, I believe it was 6, we went to Washington, D.C. to protest the war. Huge numbers of people, black people, Jewish people, Arabs, I mean, everybody you can imagine, Latinos, Asians, all there to protest this war. 2008, you saw people come out in record numbers to support Barack Obama for the presidency. And then somehow after that, that energy that I saw at the war rally, the energy I saw in November 2008 has disappeared. I can't find it. I can't find the same passion for this war in Afghanistan protesting that I did for the war in Iraq that we were protesting. I can't find people who are challenging the environmental abuses that are going on right now because of BP, but also the government's neglect in terms of not talking about how we're going to actually wean ourselves off of fossil fuel, how we're going to not just deal with deep water drilling, but shallow water drilling, how we're going to talk about the whole process of offshore drilling and its sort of deleterious impact on our environment. where are, and on the ecosystem in particular, what are the answers to those questions? Where are the people demanding answers to those questions? It seems to me that black people have not involved themselves in those conversations to the extent that they did when President Bush was in office. As someone else has said, if President Obama is our Lincoln, then we need to be his Frederick Douglass.